I actually have someone else that is ready to join us, so I am going to go ahead and bring us there. Make sure that they are here to join us. Okay, Johnny, welcome, welcome, welcome.
No, thank you. Oh, yes, Devin. I
Oh,
have
let me
a
switch
real
this
quick
over.
question in regards to where or how would you strike a balance between planning and actually doing? 'Cause a lot of times we do a whole lot of planning up front, but if you don't, because we still need to get stuff done.
Yeah, yeah. That is it's an interesting thing for that one, Johnny. And I say that one is interesting for a reason. Because people do get caught up in the thought process that we have a tremendous amount of planning that actually happens. And I have a tendency to agree completely that there is a ton of planning that happens in the Scrum world. Now, when I say that to you, I say that for a reason. When you think about Scrum, you're going to plan way more than you've ever planned in Waterfall. Period. It's just a part of what happens, it's just a part of what we do. Time perspective, it is super accurate that we plan more than anything else. Okay. Now, but according to people, planning plans are going to change. So planning, the activity of planning is really super important. Now, if I was to say to you, one of the advantages that you have available to you to help battle the time we spend in planning is time boxing, right? When it comes to Scrum, you only really have one planning meeting, and that meeting is sprint planning. Let's assume you're doing a 2 week sprint. The max time for a 2 week sprint is 4 hours. Uh, I guarantee you, if I was to ask the people that are watching right now who have experienced sprint planning and have done 2 week sprints, how long they spend in sprint planning, write that in the chat for me. How long do you actually spend in sprint planning? Now, for me, in a 2 week sprint, I spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Now, why do I spend an hour to an hour and a half? Because I've prepared. I've prepared. So, the number one thing to help you with planning is going to be your preparation. So, a good thing that can help you, and I don't always like to say this because people don't use it in the right way, is product backlog refinement. What is product backlog refinement? It is the preparation of the product backlog for the future. That's all it really is. But one of the things that you can do is get your product backlog items more prepared for that future. Now, the idea is this though. If you spend time in refinement and you're getting things ready for the future, that means when you get into planning, things have already been prepared. So here's a trick that I use. One of the biggest problems that we have is product owners that aren't prepared or even may not even get it. They may not be writing their own product backlogs. They may have a business analyst that is supporting them. You may have all these kind of things that are going on and really happening. Okay. But here's the question. How can you use that refinement meeting to help you? Well, truth is, what I do is I teach people to work things a certain way. I teach people to work things a certain way. So, some people on this call have actually, probably some people that's watching the live have probably experienced this with me. I actually will work closely with the product owner. Now, why am I working closely with the product owner? To help the product owner get product backlog items that are ready for the refinement meeting. Because I try my best not to use the refinement meeting as a way to prepare product backlog items. I try to use the refinement meeting as a way to approve product backlog items. Now, why is that important? Because that's going to give you a couple of advantages. If you actually work with your product owner outside of refinement and you're working to prepare things along the way, excuse me, one of the advantages you get is this: you have clean requirements going into refinement or into sprint planning. That's the natural benefit. The secondary benefit is this: in that refinement meeting, what you're now doing is bringing a requirement that is ready to go. It is ready to go as you can make it. And by bringing that requirement that is ready to go, you just switched the whole purpose of why the team is there. Now, I would make sure that I bring my development team in for this refinement meeting. And what is your development team doing at that point? They get to ask questions about this clean requirement. They will tell you whether that requirement is ready to go into a sprint if they have enough information. Now, most development teams will also say to you, you know what, let's go ahead and estimate it too, right? If you're estimating, they'll probably estimate it too, right? Right there in a refinement meeting. And I'm okay with that. I have no complaints about that. I do have issues with it sometimes because I like to have separate estimation meetings. But here's the deal. They're seeing it for this very first time now in a refinement meeting. So that means the second time they see it will be where? In sprint planning. So now they have a requirement that they've seen that is pretty much a ready to go requirement. They've seen it once. Now the second time they've seen it, it's going to be easier for them to make a plan because they may have come up with a solution on how they're going to solve that problem. So now it's just a different thing that we're doing. It's a different thing that we're dealing with now, which is an important. It's a very important step for us to take because it starts to change things a little bit. It starts to change things tremendously because now what's happening is your planning sessions start to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, what's going to happen is your team will get used to, they will absolutely get used to getting planning done in an hour. They will. They'll get used to getting planning done in an hour. Now you're going to have to fight them in a different way because they're not going to want to plan more than an hour. And now you're not going to have enough time in planning, okay? But the one thing you will never be able to get away from, Johnny, the one thing you will never be able to get away from is all the planning that we do, because that planning is important for us to bring in as much just-in-time information, the latest, greatest information into what we're doing. So it is one of those really amazing benefits to what we do. The question is, when you are in that planning session, how are you treating it? What are you doing with it? Are you using it as effective as you can for the time that you're spending together? And that's where the rub comes in for most teams. So I know people always will complain about planning. I've never had too many teams. If I go inside of an organization, I'm always going to get a team or two that's going to complain about planning. It's just always going to happen. But I would guarantee you that anybody in here that has been doing Scrum would probably agree with this statement, that the teams that they have that are effectively doing Scrum, effectively delivering without having a bunch of rework, have probably don't spend enough time planning. Probably don't spend enough time planning. Okay? So it's just one of those things where it is something that's difficult to address, but as long as you're having effective meetings, most people aren't going to riot or have any crazy problems in terms of how you move forward, even in terms of their complaints in that arena.